this talk was probably one of my most complicated ones. Like I started working in the product space kind of a couple of years ago, realizing that DDD had some struggle, and then made a talk. Turns out to be more than 2 hours of content for a 45-minute slot. Then I learned more stuff, and I changed the talk and topic, and then I changed it again. This is probably edition something like 3 point something of me exploring in this rabbit hole. And let's give a little bit of foundation before getting into the problem. Like, how many of you are familiar with domain-driven design? Relatively familiar. Like, okay, good. And how many are from the product side? I mean, software product or product management, product thinking, whatever it might be. Okay, so we are kind of biased in one direction. The thing about domain-driven design specifically, it was born without thinking about products. It was born about thinking about a perfect solution tailored for a specific company, and was leveraging a lot of good tools around this space. Some of these tools are working very well also when you think in the product space, others, they don't. What is the problem is we don't have a very good instruction book in that space. So there's goodwill, there's good intention, and sometimes big failures. And some ideas work, others they don't. So yeah, the other thing that I really like is, and I will try to bring a little bit of foundation on this, is just many conversation and with it depends. And the problem with this is conversation ends there. I'm actually making a point okay, what does it depend upon? Let's look at the variables, what is making the context A different from context B, so we will try to drill a little bit into this space. Let's start from the mindset. And well, ideally, that's a match made in heaven. Like curiosity is the first thing that drives DDD people. We want to explore the domain. We want to learn the complexity of the problem we are solving and come up with great models for this. And we embrace this approach of continuous learning. Looks like it's a great idea. Okay, product space is doing more or less the same thing. We are continuously learning what our customer might want to do, running experiments, trying to find the best trajectory for the evolution of our product. But this is one of the first blockers, like who's doing the learning in a product organization. We are both learners, but the tools and the people doing the learning, they might be different. I don't know how familiar you are. This is on the left side, what is called the DDD model exploration whirlpool. Comes straight from Eric Evans, and is one of the fuzziest picture in software development describing the cycle of learning that happens in domain-driven design. So we are expecting to continuously challenge our assumptions, our models, and with conversation with the expert, with new prototypes, new model, coding, discussing modeling, and repeating, and so on. The model is going to get better and more robust. Our understanding is going to grow along the way. Well, design thinking has a slightly different approach, and it's called, on the double diamond, and well, two area of diverge and converge, and but they both put learning at the center of their activities, except that if you're getting into this learning conversation with a domain-driven design mindset in a product organization, you might get answers like, oh, we already did that workshop. And they might not show up for your workshop because you're coming downstream. And we already did the exploration. And also, I mean, the most annoying thing is that it's happening in different rooms at different times, but also there's a little bit more, which is as software people, we might be the product of software engineering universities or schools, and the design tribe is a product of another type of university, and which means many times the tools and the disciplines that we apply when we try to do a good job are already rooted, and there's a mismatch coming from the university, like, you should do this, finish your job, and then give the blueprint to the software team. Well, the software team, well, I would like to get in the discussion before the blueprints, just to give an example. So the larger the organization, the more this becomes the problem. Everybody thinks they are learning, but they are learning in separate rooms, separate places, or even worse, separate companies. Like we already have a design agency dealing with the customer interviews, and the development team is not only a team away, but also maybe a supplier away. So there's not so easy communication between the people. Maybe different suppliers, different cultures, and different tools. We had another company joining a project space, and oh, we're not on Slack, and we are also using Excel for the planning. Oh, we're not using this and this. How can we be in the same space where we have all of these barriers along the way? And this was basically the first big battle we had to fight. Like dogmatism, especially if you're coming straight for only one discipline, oh, this is how we do things. That might be also on the software development side. Oh, we start with a data model, or we start with an object-oriented model, or we start with an EventStorming, or we start with the blueprint. We start with whatever you start with might actually be suboptimal in the overall space. And yes, local culture might be a problem in this space. What we found more interesting was actually this one, cross-discipline learning, like one by one, taking away some of the barriers, some of the rituals, some of the habits. Like, well, we could be in the same space. We could actually try to use different notations in the same space. And actually tools like Miro turn out to be really good for that, because they were not tailored around any specific format. They were large enough to keep different formats coexist in the same place. But the other great thing that happened when we could play with the collaboration bit was that, come on, we're both learning. Let's not follow a rigid, structured process. Let's try to find a common space for learning together, discussing insight, having different perspectives before it's too late. One of the hybridation that worked very well was a combination of continuous discovery habits from Teresa Torres, a way to, in order to understand, to get insight for experiment, you need a behavioral model somehow of how the customer or the user is playing with your product, service, whatever. And having a process modeling, EventStorming as a way to represent them was actually working very well. Just like, okay, this is what is happening. Oh, why not this? Why is this person deciding this? What is this person seeing at this moment? We had a good background for this conversation. But it's not about pitching EventStorming, pretty too late for that. But it's about finding a common ground for experiments to happen. So the thing that were working was actually almost every experiment that was mixing people, getting roles away of the picture, and also the tools was actually working well. And gave some good ideas and insight. Sorry, looks like yep. I moved my ears somehow. And then I push it back. So we have casualties, yes, local optimization. If there is one thing that should not get in the way is the optimization of processes, practices, and also time utilization for one single group. Like, well, for example, the design team has a lot more things to do in the early stage of a project. And if we think about how to structure the time, they might be tempted to work well, we iterate, we do a lot of experiment, and then, well, goodbye. And that's clearly suboptimal. But at the same time, it is not even a way to force people to be always available at the mercy of the rhythm, of the pace of the development team. So the more you can get around those boundaries, well, the better. Put in another way, you can optimize for the global results. This means like for every single team and discipline would be suboptimal. Just accept this. Like look at the performance of a larger organization or larger branch, group of teams, larger team, whatever it is. It just forget the local optimization. Oh, but my agenda says like, I don't want to be without anything to do. You're going to find something anyway. And the other part of optimization is has to do with the learning and the target. Like in domain-driven design, we relied a lot on the idea of domain expert, people that we could talk to and people that could be trustworthy for our exploration, while users are not the same type of people. So actually, the implicit optimization for domain-driven design, if most of the solutions are facing internal users, the idea of domain expert and user was somehow overlapping. And that was a luxury that was not well underlined in the books. Like, we are talking with somebody that is a domain expert, understands the problem, and also wants a software application helping them to do something that is very precise. This conversation can be incredibly rich and also precise, and also can be a little bit of a negotiation, while users are not anything like that. Users can tell you something which is incredibly dumb, and they might also buy another product at the end. So not exactly the same thing. Another thing that was that is working, and also, yeah, so the examples from Christina just before getting on stage, the idea of large-scale visualization tool. And this book from Jim Benson is actually underlying the power of these approaches. He calls them Obeya, as a large surface where most decisions happen. So the idea here is let's build a centralized part when the most important part of knowledge are available. It's not exactly a wiki. A wiki might be a little bit more boring. It's something visual, big. It's something that forces people to have a shared vision, and also refine this vision as long as we go. I have a little example that was some of the starting point of a discussion that actually didn't grow as we expected, but there's something that might still be interesting here. Like there's a combo of screenshot from the website, also process modeling areas. We have zoomed out so that they are not readable, so that we could model also the processes happening before that, like marketing and media, deciding which pages to push on paid traffic or things like this. But mostly the idea of a surface like this was to show that that's a place to contain everything, and there might be mistakes, clearly, like the fact that we have a very large disclaimer there is absolutely intentional. One specific thing that was happening on a wiki page, we had some information that were needed for actually years. We didn't get them. So what I did was I started publishing a wiki page with a big disclaimer. This is just my personal assumption, given a half second-hand information I got from conversation, but this is my understanding. And I put there, I think this is how the commissions are working in this company. Suddenly, I got 3 or 4 people correcting me, of course telling me, oh, you should also add this and this and this. Nobody volunteered for finishing the page. Don't expect too much. So you get a lot of project managers, self-recruited, telling you what to do, but you get the information you wanted. So by accepting to be temporarily wrong but visible, while you were attracting friends or contributors very, very quickly. And I think that was one of the interesting lessons that we have. Suddenly we had the page starting with wrong information and a lot of people trying to correct us. So when it comes to the learning pace, that was the curiosity. We had a few moments of, we're doing the same thing. We are both curious. We want to solve the same problem. Do we share the same mindset? Can we walk together hand in hand in the sunset? I think no. And I'm sorry to do this. Looks like you're trying to hug a tree and the tree is, well, come on. Just kind of an embarrassing moment, but we are still different. The mindset, I mean, the common goal is great, but we share different experiences, different knowledges, also different risk. But there is one thing which is really important to understand. We, technical people in this room today, we are always going to be solution-oriented, no matter what. There's a problem. I'm already coding the solution in my head, and I guess you're doing the same. And this is going to be, well, a fuel for a good discussion, but also a problem. So be aware of this. Great solution for this is product trials. So just don't let decisions for the learning happening in only one discipline. You need business, you need tech, you need design, and you need this to be a collaboration. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. Now the other tricky part is the strategy. And this is how I do strategy usually when working inside company. While we run a big picture, we try to understand everything that happens inside the company. Normally, a big picture EventStorming takes an entire business line end to end, and then we look at the blockers. We find what is the current bottleneck of the organization. That's a space where we should invest immediately for the great improvement. Okay, that's what we can call core domain if we are with a DDD background. But despite the messiness of the image, it's a pretty clear information. Like we might have 300, 400 events on the wall. There's a blocker in the system, which is the area that we should work tomorrow, because this is where we could make a difference. And this is a privilege, because inside the organization, we have a flow, and usually a well-determined bottleneck. There might be fuzziness around it, but the pointers are relatively clear. In ProductLand, we don't have this. We have to make choices because we might have different tribes of users going for a different direction. Somebody's going to go cheap, somebody's going to go enterprise, somebody is going to go full features, and they're moving, and they're also hard to track. So we need tools to manage this uncertainty. How many of you know about these three? Opportunity solution trees and lean value tree, okay, and impact mapping, okay, a little bit more. But I mean, you don't need to know all of three. They have something in common, like managing the uncertainty, like this idea of there's an experiment to be done. There's maybe we might have a solution which is fitting the opportunity, but there's a lot of uncertainty in the language, and in here instead it's just like vision, goal, bet, and experiment. Kind of similar. There's also another interesting part, which is all of these structures. They share the tree or graph shape, assuming there's something at the core which is shared. And I think that's one of the problems here, because many product companies have absolutely no idea where they want it to go. So assuming that you have a strategy, that you have a vision, that you have a clear goal, assuming this is already a trap. Like, well, let's make sure that you have at least something. But many times, oh, let's forget the route. Let's try to go with experiment. Then when it comes to the way to deal with the evolution is, we are less deterministic. We need to include experiments in the flow. And while this is not the way we are used to work, in a more traditional mindset, like we have stuff in the backlog, we fight for the estimation, but basically tell us what to do, we're just negotiating on the timing. Now here, there's a lot more discussion about, should we really do that? Or why are we doing this? Like, what is the advantage that this new functionality is supposed to be bringing? And we don't know. I mean, the honest answer from a product person is, well, we don't know. It's an experiment. So there's randomness on both sides. And so we need to be in a place for continuous experiment. And this kind of sounds funny. Like, well, we like experimenting, we like learning, we like testing our assumption. That's kind of fine, except we cannot learn without reliable data. The moment you run an experiment, you need to measure how many people prefer this option or how much value you delivered. And this is where something starts falling apart. Because the moment we start doing this, like, well, we just look at the data and we think we have a scientific background and it was software, so we have data, except we didn't. So this is actually a photoshopped version of a problem that we have in a given scenario. We were looking for booking transfer. So people that were booking one thing and then changing the booking to another week or another location. And that was interesting. The reality was a little bit more complicated, but this is capturing the story. The context, we have a next generation front end. That was the part we were doing, and that was working on top of a legacy backlog. Okay, and we need to test the choices we were doing in the front end. And but in the backlog, we don't have transfers. What do you mean you don't have transfer? You're doing booking transfer. Oh, we do booking transfer the old way. We delete the old booking and we create a new one with the same customer data. Okay, and so people from BI came to the rescue. So like, oh, we can run a query that detects booking created in the same day. A booking from the same customer has been canceled. And then yes, we run it as a data adjustment script, as a batch, late night, or maybe once a week, or something. And everybody was happy with this. Except this is a picture of me, like during this meeting, and I was completely freaking out. Like they were adding 2 layers of randomness on top. We have data, but we don't know if the data is telling exactly what we need. But also we had more scripts messing up with the data, and we didn't even know if the scripts had run or not. So whenever we were looking at the data, well, I found myself stopping watching the data because I didn't trust it anymore. It was completely messed up, and also the numbers behind it were big. And why are we looking at randomness? So it turns out that from an architectural perspective, not every domain are the same. That was the scenario we were in. Like we had an anemic monolith where all the legacy logic was based on CRUD and store procedure. And this is where business intelligence ended up adding the extra layers of interpretation. The business wanted precise deterministic interpretation of what is happening in the system, and BI was given this answer. But the answer was not deterministic, was questionable, plus delays. The other approach, the one that we were pushing forward, was, well, we might have rich event-driven domain models, a place where transfer is actually a thing, and we don't need any layer of interpretation because we're modeling the customer intention at this level, so this becomes a lot cheaper. And we have data which might be different, but is unquestionable because that's exactly the thing. So the moment, this is one thing which is missing from many product-related discussion. It's just like the way you're implementing your infrastructure really changes a lot. It gives you a lot more deterministic information. And this is not a minor advantage. And also, this is costly. The most annoying part of it was the moment we tried to make the model, the application model better, oh, but then you're breaking all the other scripts that we had. So it was extra legacy on top of the wrong legacy, just under a different budget label. So kind of a confirmation of we were doing things right. Rich domain models, even sourcing and event-driven, provide better insights. It's not, I think we were saying this in the DDD community for a long time. I think we were not saying it well enough. At least I didn't. I think I could say it better now because I saw, oh, this part. And that's the most annoying part, which is questionable data quickly turn experiments into power play. What do I mean? I mean, oh, looks like this idea is better because we had the 10% increment on this range. Oh, but this was coming because of this, and this data is, and so if data is questionable, then all we are left with is power play. And then people were not even learning from the experiments. They were defending the past assumption, and the environment quickly became toxic. So not really interesting. So what I wanted to say is one thing is data is not given. Just the fact that we have a software system doesn't mean we have reliable data. We need a well-designed, possibly domain-rich system to have good, valuable data from the beginning. Then there's another layer on top of it, which is interpretation. And interpretation can be dysfunctional. That was the space of discussion for us. I don't know if you're familiar with this yourlogicalfallacies.com, one of my favorite websites. And most of the discussion we had with the product managers were in that space. Oh, yes, but we already decided, and well, Stroman argument, sunken cost fallacy, we were basically mapping with the sentences with the fallacies behind it. Well, but good idea is we had a product triad, so 3 people discussing about it might actually help. And that was my enlightening moment. You need a triad to hope that at least one person is entering the discussion without fallacies or without explicit biases. It's a little bit darker than it is. But maybe you can be that person. Yeah, that's, sorry, I was anticipating this joke. So increases the probability of having at least one critical thinker in the room. That's what we want. Any ideas in this space? I try to be a little bit darker and a little bit brighter, sorry. And first idea, make learning an explicit mission. We are all learning. Business side might not admit they are learning. That's one of the common problems keeping me awake at night from 10 years ago now. This is a good trick, like frame expectation and winning criteria up front before running the experiment. The experiment is gonna succeed if we match this and this. This is not gonna save you, but it's creating at least a decent framing. Leave space for surprises. I mean, this is a learning experiment, so even if you frame it up front, there's something that you were not considering. So you're gonna be smarter along the way. So you also need to leave space for improving the experiment, improving the documentation around it, improving the framing also, and improving the measurement. It's not like you don't have the tools when you start. Just accept this. Last thing, you might need a lot of storytelling to tell this was the experiment, this was the assumption, this is what we wanted to test, and make this storytelling visible, available to more people in the organization. And last thing is you need patience, a lot of patience, because if you run the experiment, if you're learning, there's still a lot of people that is gonna be patronizing you, and that's can be exhausting, so be ready for this. Let's switch topic. That's very DDD-ish. Talking about the language, you cannot say you're doing driven design if you don't use ubiquitous language. And ubiquitous language is one of those little evasive concepts that were with us for a long time. So quick recap. I'm not gonna teach this, but I'm just gonna recapping. Why do we focus on the language? Because language is a key tool for our understanding. We use it without even realizing that this tool is not exactly reliable. As software people, we need binary precision in understanding what we need to do, but to get this information, we use conversational language, which is not that precise. So many fallacies are possible, and the ubiquitous language is the idea of a language that stands in between. It's as flexible as a conversational language, but as precise as a coding language. And it's something that is crafted, grown along many sessions, and to get to this point, like every term has only one meaning. This is great, but it only happens inside a specific bubble with fewer people with the same purpose, and we call this bubble a bounded context. Okay, But it's not the only paradigm in the space. Like a very common idea is, well, call it canonical language. Like we would like everybody to speak the same language, maybe around the entire organization. And everybody should speak the same language. Sounds like a great idea, which is, yeah, great, but doesn't work. This is my perfect favorite example of failure for the human race to agree about how to put 3 holes in the wall. It's a very simple problem. It doesn't have a solution, and we failed. So can we all speak the same language? Come on, we failed this. So yes, that's my summary. It can work for very small thing, but the investment is massive. Well, so that's the assumption where we ended up. Like we went to local optimized language, optimized for local purpose inside the system. And we also realized that this was working, providing us better model, also better team relationship and so on. Talking with the expert, I mean, it's good stuff. And the original battle that we fought was against the canonical language, mostly at the database level. If we were doing data integration, we were assuming that, oh, we have different models, but we're still talking with the same database. And the database is a flat language because of structure. But over the years, this used to be a very important battle 10 years ago. Now, microservices and many other tools are kind of making the idea of multiple independent bubbles with their own persistence a lot more viable. This was heretic 10 years ago. Now it's almost mainstream. And, well, victory. And except that the battle is not over. The moment you start talking with users, they think exactly in the same way. They want to see stuff, assuming that is one flat language. There is no way to teach them, no, actually, it's a little bit more sophisticated than this. We have many independent bubbles for this language. No, you're going to fail if you do this. And this language is not going to follow the ubiquitous paradigm. It's going to be something different. Is very close to the canonical language paradigm, and also BI is another place where they still speak a flat language because the management wants it. So what might be like a bad surprise for DDD people, the concept of ubiquitous language still works very well, but it's not generalistic, or at least I don't think it can be the only paradigm to describe a language. The surface language has a different type of behavior. While the ubiquitous language is deep, defined to bedrock, the surface, it should be only on the surface. I don't need to explain and clarify everything. I just need that the users are going to understand it. And while we need precision, because we need to code this, on the surface, we need the opposite. We need to give the illusion of simplicity. Well, think about the Google request form. Like, while behind the scenes, you're running parallel queries in a distributed system, the user doesn't want to do that, doesn't want to know that. So you need to provide the illusion of simplicity. Plus a few other things, like freedom to evolve on the ubiquitous language. If we have a new insight, oh, but the users are not going to like it, so the path might be divergent. Okay, so they are not the same thing. I think we need to understand that we're not, even if you're talking with experts on the UX side, that they find, oh, we are doing information architecture, we are focusing on the language too, we are focusing on the language subject to different forces with different purposes. Putting everything together is not necessarily a great idea. Understanding the other viewpoint and finding a possible way to reimagine this and dealing with the forces, I think, is a little bit more sophisticated on one side, but also useful, because the other one is an illusion. They are coexisting, and we need to find a way for them to interoperate. Put in another way, the customer will be always wrong. Like they will think in a flat language, they will give us requirement and little stories reflecting this perception. If we do what the user wants, we'll always end up with a monolith. that we need to understand this drift. We are wrong too. Like we detect the language inconsistencies, we build bounded context, and if we expose our bounded context to the users, we're going to lose customers. So yeah, that's we still need this. We need not to expose them. Little interlude, but the most annoying thing in this scenario. Is it really a product? When we were asking this question, like how many customers do you have, we were getting answers like this, like it's an internal product, we do products, it's a solution that we are evolving into a product, or this, like, so most of the people joining the product-like discussion were not actually doing products. And there's a clear question that might help here, which is how many customers do you have? And it's simple. If it's 0, you have a dream, not a product. If you have 1, you have a solution. And maybe good for domain-driven design, but maybe even not, because you're getting into a generic problem. And if you have many, yeah, that's where you should be. Many people during those discussions are actually trapped here in the, well, we have a few customers, because you had a solution for one, and then you wanted to transition into a product, and this is where you get into this, we call it the Miranda anti-pattern, if you remember the Devil Wears Prada movie, and you get only one big customer, which is controlling you in kind of, yeah, abusive way sometimes, like, and you lost your independence. If there is one thing about doing product, it's just like you should be in charge, and in this case, you are not. So what's the point of going product if we let others decide? I think this is one of the possible answers. If you don't have anybody in your organization able to do this defense line, like, great idea, but not in my product, then you're not doing a product. You're just at the mercy of the biggest customer. Sometimes you have to do it. I mean, if there is a security agency asking you to do weird thing, probably you have no way to say no. But yeah, I'm not going to drill into that area. Product thinking implies responsibility. And I think the point is, how much are we leading here? Are we downstream, like the Devil Wears Prada, or are we upstream? Rework from the company behind Basecamp, while you might like their approach or not, but it's probably the most representative extreme here. And this was leading me into the other big problem in this space, which is, well, design integrity, or what I call the readiness to an uncertain future. And this discussion started from this sentence, like, everybody has technical debt. And does everybody has technical debt? Why, hopefully. No. But actually, when somebody was asking this question, I wanted to say no, but I didn't want to disrupt the speaker. So I followed the crowd and I was quiet. But I don't think it's the right question, and I think it's complacent. I think there are quite a few bad things about the whole idea of technical debt. First thing is, the moment we start talking about technical debt, you get another developer, so somebody that should be on your side, telling you, well, it's not always technical debt. Sometimes it's craft, or maybe because technical debt is only when you're trading a future evolution for a speed, like, and I feel like I'm suffocating. I don't want to talk about this. The code is ugly. We need to do something about it. I don't care discussing about why the code is ugly and the reason behind it. This is just an extra cost on the technical debt. The second part is begging your product owner to leave the refactoring, negotiating for some refactoring space in the backlog. Why do you do this? It's humiliating, and it's also useless and leading you into a bad place. So I prefer other ideas, and this one is my favorite, like design integrity, and or fitness for purpose. I'll try to be quick in getting the point, and of course Italian examples can only be pizza. If this is your business, that's something that you can serve to your customer. Looks beautiful, looks tasty, great, that's my product. This is not something that you're going to serve to your customer. You might have experiments that will turn into this, Great, you keep it in the kitchen, you put it in the trash, you don't serve it to your customer. Sorry, we're doing A/B testing. I want to sit at the other table. You don't do this. So when you're doing product, there is no reason to craft an inferior product. But the thing is, you should still be in charge of laying down your roadmap and strategy. Why should you be there? And also no reason to serve an inferior product. You might go for an alternative product like this one. Like this is still a pizza, it's a square pizza, is optimized for walking, optimized for long exposure, could be cooked twice and still is good, while the round pizza could lose some flavor. And you might get in a situation where, well, you get an extra requirement, like we want a calzone by the end of the next week. And this means, well, the round pizza, you can just fold it and you have a calzone. With a squared pizza, oh, well, that's 1 meter, should we fold it? Well, we are not going to have a calzone if our design is a square pizza. This is not the wrong design, it's just targeting a different type of market. So that's the type of situation where you could say, like, great, but not on this platform. And the whole idea is also to be ready for a likely future. Now I realize I have a little bit less time than I wanted. So this is, I use it for many concepts. In this case, what I want to talk about Bruce Lee or martial art is the readiness, the ready stance position. I don't know much about martial arts, so don't take me as an expert, but there's one thing that I learned, which is when you are preparing for a fight, you need to be in a position that gives you the highest chances to cover the possible moves of the opponent. You don't know what the opponent is going to do. You want to be ready to capture attack from the left, from the right. You don't start the fight in this position. I mean, you're already dead if you start in this way. So you want to be ready. And that's exactly what I mean with design integrity. You want to be ready for the most likely things that are going to happen to your code base. And the best place to be is actually this one. If your model matches your current understanding, you're in the best possible place. If your understanding is better than your code, well, time to improve the code. If your recipe for an LDL pizza is better than the one that you serve, I think you have a problem. And you might feel also, weird every single day offering second-class pizza to your customer. But, well, there are people enjoying this type of path of, we are still struggling with our technical debt, but you can get from A to B in another way. If your design is matching the current purpose of your system, a new business opportunity is just a matter of answering simple questions like, where's the next fuel station? Is there a nice restaurant nearby? The future state is actually a lot simpler if your present state is normal. But that's a typical setting in many companies, just like these are the type of problems. It's not like where we're going to go next. We need a place to camp for the night. I have a strange rush of my leg. Where's my shoe? And where's North? And where's Joe? And and this is sucking away so much of your time. So I'm actually skipping this one or going fast for this one. But this was the most annoying part. We had a large product, 23 teams. The code base were partitioned, but not strongly partitioned. The most important thing is everybody knew they needed to change. Nobody was starting the change. They wanted consensus of what was the most important thing to start with. And that was freaking me out. And but the best thing in this scenario, so we did two things. One was playing a session of reverse road mapping, trying to assess desired state, reversely look at the action that could make you go in a better place, find an action with no blockers. You can start doing this tomorrow. That was a quick way to get consensus. But the other part that was interesting was realizing that a structure with good bounded context in place was slashing, not only diminishing, was completely slashing the cost of consensus. You're making decision about to improve the system locally, then you can also do it continuously. Yep, so that's a road nearby, one not taking it. And readiness without direction. I would say that's the important thing. Like, there are two fallacies competing here. Like, somebody might say, like, but you cannot be ready for everything. Of course we are not. And if we get ready for everything, that's where we get sterile over design. But if we don't have any variability in the future, well, our future is going to be fragile because we don't have place for adaptation. There's something in between, which is likely possible stages, and something which is good in the liminal space. It's not black and white; it's kind of grayish, but that's a place to be. In order to be there, we need alignment, vision, and purpose. We need to understand where do you want to go, what might be likely, and yes, where we cannot catch all the birds, we need to make choices. I will move faster, and I'm really sorry for this. Time to close. Sorry. I warn you, that's a rabbit hole, and I could talk about this for probably 3-4 hours or days or months. But let's get out of it. First thing, the problem number one was dogmatism and tribalism. On our side, or DDD says we should do things like this. Design thinking says that we should do. Forget about it. Put your competence in a pool. Collaborate with people. Learn, experiment, make little failures, and improve. Design integrity. That's I would say the most important ingredient that could come on the technical side. Like, without design integrity, your ambition are grounded. You're always going to discuss, oh yes, that's a great idea, but we cannot move. Like, it's limiting the choices on the strategic part. It's a responsibility for the product evolution. And plus, nobody understands it except you. Architectures, they have different needs. I don't want to talk about everything, but especially with products that have a workflow in this, well, being event-driven gave a little bit more flexibility, clarity, and data maintainability. Breaking barriers becomes the important thing. Moving to the last one, which is the most important thing, is we cannot do it alone. We are not bringing the only solution to the table, so be ready for some collaboration, book reading, sharing, and just open to learning and to dropping some of our beliefs. Curiosity is actually the thing that matters. That's it. Sorry for rushing at the end.